Welcome to another edition of Indie Insight, and today I have JB Schroeder with me. Thank you for joining me, JB.
Thank you for having me, Marnie.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My pen name is JB Schroeder, and I write romantic suspense. It's got a little bit of an edge. It's almost women's fiction-y. And part of that's sometimes the subject matter, but sometimes it's just, I really think it's just my voice. It's not fluffy romantic suspense. My taglines are Where Everyday Meets Evil. That's my Retrieval Inc. series. And it's a little more hard-hitting, definitely grittier. The first book in that series is Runaway. And my other tagline is Where Evil Lurks in the Most Unlikely Places, and that's my Unlikely series. And I chose those themes because when I started this, there were a ton of serial killers and basement torture chambers, procedurals, police, et cetera, and and Navy SEALs. I love to read all of that stuff. Total awesomeness. But I didn't think I wanted my own niche. I wanted somewhere to find readers who weren't, who love romantic suspense, but were looking for something a little bit different. What could be scarier than everyday random people like us finding evil right under their noses all along? So,
wow.
Yeah.
I am a bit of a chicken, so is it really scary or suspenseful, or?
They're suspenseful. Like I said, the Retrieval Inc. series is a little bit grittier, but by no means terrifying. This is not horror. This is not, total insanity. And then my Unlikely series is more straight up romantic suspense with more of a balance between the romance and suspense. And I tend to do Happily for Now is not necessarily walking down the aisle with a ring, but together at the end, because that makes me happy, and I like a little realism in my books.
I like that. Yeah. Happily Ever After is always just that chapter.
Yeah.
Well, at least my experience.
Yeah.
So what made you become a writer?
Oh, I have always loved to read ever since I stole a Kathleen Woodward off my mom's nightstand, and loved romance. And I went to school as a creative writing major. And even when I was there, I would tell people, I joined a sorority, and during Rush, one of the main questions they ask you is, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I would say I want to be a romance novelist. Here I am doing romantic suspense, but I just always knew I wanted to do it. On the other hand, I knew when I graduated, I didn't want to be some starving artist, straight out of the gate. I needed an actual job with actual income. I did go into publishing because I love to read as much as I love to write. And, that was great. I learned so much. I still was a starving artist essentially because they do not pay well for entry-level jobs back then, and probably still don't, but it was good experience, and it lined my bookshelves with free books for sure. So I started out in production, and that was not my jam, a little too boring for me. And so I moved into design, and I've been a book designer ever since, and I still do that freelance, but I haven't worked in New York for a long time now. So
that's exciting. So you kind of had the tools ready to make yourself ready to be your own independent publisher.
Yes, I did. When it came to self-publishing, I wasn't nearly as terrified as a lot of people are, because I had graphic design skills. I knew a lot about publishing. I didn't have quite as much of a barrier to doing it as some other, as someone coming in fresh, slightly less to learn. And back to the writing, I didn't really intend to wait this long, but you have your career, you have your kids, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you start writing, it takes a while. It takes a while before your skills are up to par. And, you know, I initially was thinking, I mean, when I really started going, self-publishing was only just beginning. And at the time, because of my history in publishing, I wasn't willing to jump in. I wanted everything professional. I felt it was important. But in the years that I had an agent and, you know, had done all the pitching and all of that, submitting, self-publishing, I mean, it's, you know how it was. It started like nobody's business, just took off, and people started doing it professionally. The books became, you know, better quality, both inside and out. Same with the writing. And then I thought, okay, I'm on board. This is exciting. And this I can do. And, you know, so I do all the things anybody traditional published does. I do, you know, I hire editors. I go through my paces with numerous revisions. I have, you know, and of course the design work is my own, but that's about the only thing that I don't have to go outside for. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
So do you do any research for any of your novels that the viewers might find interesting?
I do. I always end up with research. Little by little, I've discovered that I'm best off leaving the bulk of the research to the end of the book, because they never write themselves quite the way I think they will. One of my funnest researching was in one of my books that involves the hero owns a chain of high-end quality markets, and the heroine is a social worker and putting people back to work. So she's placing her people in the stores, his stores. And I needed some big culmination to happen at the end for the showdown. So I went to my local grocery store manager and cajoled him into giving me a tour. I really wanted to see like behind the scenes, but legally he wasn't allowed. But he took me as far as he could. And before you think I'm totally crazy, I at least knew him a little bit. We would chat. He knew I wrote. But I decided, okay, you just have to be bold and ask him and see where you can get. And it was the best move, because once I really saw the butcher's area and all those machines, the ideas came and I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I was able to ask the right questions. And he said, no, that won't work, because it plugs into the ceiling. It doesn't plug into the floor, into the wall where she could rip the plug out. So it made all the difference. And it's a pretty cool showdown.
That's awesome. Butchers.
Yeah, it's it's good.
Yeah, I saw on TV the other day, I don't know, it was a doctor show, and someone's hand got caught in one of those big cake dope. It wasn't bloody or anything, but just it has lingered.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I can't do that. So will your book linger also?
Not by my cuts of meat quite the same way without thinking a little bit about it.
Yeah, the mind is a scary place.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. So is there any other research you want to share, or you don't have to? I just don't want to make you feel like you can't.
That's maybe my best research story. I'm about to start researching for the current manuscript.
Very cool. Well, you kind of made me think the question of, are you a plotter or are you a pantster?
I am a little bit in the middle. I would dearly love to be a straight out plotter. But what generally happens is I have to start that way, and then I veer off, and then at some point I stop and take stock and try to make another plan, and then I pants for a while. My last two books, especially this current one, I've learned that I do better writing when I can really stay involved and when I write fast. I shouldn't say do better, but I flow better. I stay in the story. The ideas come a little bit more organically. The subconscious works at night while you're sleeping. I'll often sort of pose a question to myself right before I'm falling asleep, in hopes that it will percolate and when I'm writing fast, I get up early, 5 a.m. and I write before I have to get in the shower, get the kids ready, walk the dog, get to work, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's just like exercise. If you don't do it first thing, it's not getting done. And then if I can, I come back and do more in the evening. But I am tired in the evening. So, so I've been doing NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, in November. We have another challenge in my local, my New Jersey romance writers called JRoWriMo, a direct takeoff, in February. So I did 50,000 words in November and 30,000 words in February. And then I just had to like finish up after that. So I just hit the end. And then of course you have to see what a mess you've made and but it turns out when I'm writing that fast, it doesn't veer off too much. I mean, my ending is not what I thought my ending is going to be. I switched some scenes around, etc. But my planning about who the villain is and how they're going to discover it, and those points through the story I hit. I just mix up like, oh, that scene's not going to happen there, or their big black moment fight isn't going to be about this. It's going to be about that. So I try to plot. I really wish I could plot, because I feel like it would be so much more seamless and so many less revisions. But it doesn't seem to work for me.
Yeah, you have to go with your style.
Which are you naturally? A pantser?
My first book, I was just, I'm going to write a book. And I just wrote. And I just listened to the muses. I might be crazy, but I just listen to the voices in my head that tell me what's going to happen. So
I think there's something instinctive about it, and you have to honor that. I mean,
it's so hard.
You have to make it work and make sense. And
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's mostly just like scenes. My brain works in like scenes, like like a play, like scene end.
That's actually really good, because my brain works in snippets of conversation.
Oh, I'll get that, but it's usually the other books.
To me.
Yeah, I have books that fight. I don't know if you have that.
What do you mean?
I'm working on one book, and the other books are like, but
calling to you.
Excuse me, I want to tell you something. I'm like, no, go away. Shh, come later. But you have to at least listen for a moment, write it down, because there are all these little things bouncing around your head.
Yeah, and they'll be gone later if you don't capture it.
Oh, isn't that the worst, when you had the most brilliant moment and you didn't record it? You're like,
yes.
It was Pulitzer Prize winning and I lost it. It wasn't.
Frustrating.
It was never that. It was like, it would have been good. Sorry. I'm like, eh. Well, did you find ever that you write too much and it's a scene maybe that doesn't progress the story, and it's something you write and then you cut out because it's like, this is not getting me to the end?
Yes, quite often. And that's part of the hazard of, writing during these writing challenges. You don't care if it's too long, because guess what? You hit your word count. You don't stop to make the hard decisions. You just flow. And, later I'll find out, that seems not, like you said, it's not hitting its marks. It's not moving the action along. It's not furthering their relationship, or it could be done better if I just combine it with this other scene. There's no reason for it to have its own whole how many pages, stuff like that. I do find, but that's I do a lot of the work in the revisions.
Yeah, that's the part where you can make your 130,000 down to 90.
Yes,
all those precious words. But
yes,
someone once told me you can use those for teasers.
I've seen,
I'm not good at that.
A lot of people do, like, oh, here's a bonus, it's a cut scene, and I don't know. I keep thinking I'll try it, but I haven't yet. So often I'm cutting and pasting little pieces of stuff that I don't know. I haven't really made that work yet. I think it's cool, but I just haven't really found that I can make it.
Oh, I agree. There's so many people that do really cool things I want to do that there's no way I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
It's a nice dream.
Yes, agreed.
But maybe.
I'm going to keep doing it because I have a hard time. Like I always think after one of those writing challenges, okay, you should just get up at 5 a.m. for the rest of your life and keep this going because it works for you. You're making progress, you know, not obviously with Nano, I have to do the evening stint too, because it's just not enough. An hour in the morning is not enough. But, you know, if I fall off the wagon and then you're not in your story or you're too tired or, you know, so I intend to keep doing them because it just gets my arse in gear, you know.
The indie community. So my question to you is going to be, why do you like being an indie writer?
Mostly I like the control. I'm a little bit type A, kind of like not wanting to do it until it was being done in a way I thought, you know, was really top notch. And I think part of that comes from being a book designer. It's not just a creative job. You really do have to be focused on the details to be a good designer. And part of the reason I like the control is not just that and some standard. It's also my life right this second is not, I have friends that are just killing themselves to get 3 and 4 books out of a year because that's what they signed a contract for. I could not do that right now. That would put me in the grave. Right now, my kids are still the priority. I wish writing could be first, you know, sometimes, but it's not time yet. And I have a day job too. I have to pay the bills. So, you know, someday, listen, I'm already ahead of where I was. And my plan is to just keep on trucking. And eventually, by the time the kids are out of the house and on their own, then I'll be able to really step it up. But if I can keep at this pace, by the time that happens, I'll have 10 books out, you know? So I just have to, so again, it's a control thing because I want to still control what's my priority and kind of, you know, whatever. Listen, if someone offered me some money, right, I would shift things and I would go ahead but right now indie publishing is right for me. I feel a lot of pride in it because I'm doing it, you know, myself. And as you know, there's so much to learn and so much to contend with. And gosh, you're not just writing the book. I mean, you are a business owner, you're a publisher, you're, in my case, a designer, you're, you know, organizing it all, you're the production person, you're doing a whole book launch, you're keeping up with the marketing through the year, you're doing promos, you're doing stuff like this. It's a huge undertaking. I'm really, really proud of doing it. I'm proud of having 3, almost 4 books out. And I also like the other indie community folks. I mean, they're the ones, they're thinking fresh. They're trying new things. I'm not out in the forefront of that, but I just don't have the time. But I love being part of it. You know, it kind of keeps me on my toes a little bit more. I think I would get a little lazy if I was in a traditional contract. I mean, I know you still have to do your marketing and stuff, but I probably wouldn't do enough of it. I would probably think, okay, they got it, you know. I just think it's really cool. The indie thing is really cool.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to talk to me.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I was so pleased you asked me.
Today I have Jenna Greene with me. Thank you for joining me, Jenna.
Oh, no problem. Hi.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Jenna, and I'm a middle school teacher. I teach grade 6, mostly language arts, sometimes some social studies, sometimes some health. And I have a little daughter who's just turned 2 and is definitely defining the dictionary definition of the terrible twos. So it is nice to be talking to an adult who's not going to scream no at me. Yeah. Big dragon boater, and whenever I find time, we write.
Very cool. So you are a young adult writer?
Yes, primarily young adult. I've dabbled in some poetry, but young adult is the age I teach. It's what I like to read a lot of the time, and it's what I love to write.
Wonderful. Could you tell me a little bit about the books you've written?
Sure. I have a young adult contemporary novel. It's called Heroine, and it's not part of a series, and it takes place primarily in a drama classroom or drama community. And then I also have a young adult fantasy series through Champagne Books, and we're on the third of the 4 books. There'll be 4 in the series, and the third one's in edits right now with my publisher, and it's going to hopefully come out this summer.
Wow, very cool. So today you're here to talk a little bit of an anthology that you participated in. Would you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Sure. So this is my first foray into writing short stories, and the premise is fairy tales told from the point of view of the villains, so their side of the story. So it's called The Wicked Truth, play on the word wicked, wicked stepmother, wicked witch, wicked queen, and then their perspective on all these famous fairy tales. So in the anthology, there's 7 fairy tales, things from Cinderella, the Snow Queen, Rumpelstiltskin, Princess and the Pea. And the story that I chose was Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. And went through a lot of debating on who the villain is in that story. There's lots of different versions of the original story where the bears eat Goldilocks. And originally it was an old crone, actually, not a young girl in the tale. But I decided that the villain, or the point of view I would tell, was the mama bear in the story. And you'll find out why she's a villain if you read to the end of the story, because she's a very sympathetic character, especially if you're a mom of a new young baby bear. And so it's her point of view on the story.
That sounds really exciting. I know when you said that, like, who's the bad guy?
Yeah.
My first thought was Goldilocks.
Yeah.
I know, you're like, really?
She definitely has some villainous tendencies in the story, but she's also a child, and so you can't really she's not necessarily nice, and she does some pretty bad things, but when you get to the end, you're gonna maybe sympathize with her a little bit and really think about the mother bear's actions and whether it was appropriate. So I feel my story's got a little bit of debate in it on whether our character really is a villain. She definitely probably won't see herself that way, but it'll be interesting to see what readers think.
That's very exciting. And so there's not only Goldilocks, but 6 other villains to kind of learn a little bit about. That's really fun. I like that. Did you want to talk about any more of your books?
Sure. So I actually have a lot of projects in the works as well. So with my young adult fantasy series, the first one's called Imagine, second one Reality, the third one that's coming out soon, Heritage, and the last one, I have not started writing it yet, but that's the plan for the summer. It'll be called Legacy. And so there's the 4. I also have a picture book in the works with 2 of the minor characters in it. They're little brownies called Alana and Petey, and they are hilarious to write. When they pop up in the story, I get excited as a writer. So they're going to have a picture book, and I've written it, and someone else is going to illustrate because I cannot draw. For that series, it's about a 15-year-old girl named Cate. She turns 16 eventually, but she's 15 and she's from Earth. And there's a girl named Becky, and she's 10 and she's also from Earth. But they end up meeting each other after they get kidnapped, I guess is the word, taken from their world to the magical world of Orin. And then they find out that they have roles to play in this world and things to do. And so it's really their adventure. They bond pretty quickly, even though there's an age gap, right? We have a tween and definitely a rebellious teenager, but because they're the only people in their situation, they really bond. And it's their explorations through magic and all these mystical creatures and the missions that they have to take out.
So did you base your creatures on like real stories, or were these all completely made up, or were they inspired by something?
Some of them, we have some traditional characters like elves and dwarves. You see a few pixies, and we have the brownies. And then a lot of characters of the mystical kind are just made up, because that's really fun to do. The joy of fantasy versus maybe realistic fiction or history. You have to be true and authentic. Fantasy, you can make it up. You can give them horns and humps and wings and all sorts of fun stuff. So it's a mixture of, for those people that like fantasy with the dragons and things like that, it's got some of that. And for those that would prefer to see some originals, we've got that too. I love that balance and that creativity.
That is really cool. Like, I agree with that. Fantasy does lend that opening to be, well, it's my world. I made it up. So yes, it can be this. You don't have to, unlike if you write sci-fi, you have to be very careful to not anger people.
Yes. And it's interesting, and people always ask if I do research, and definitely there's historical elements that come into play in like creating cities or towns. Sometimes they're modeled after maybe historical architecture, but I don't have to do a lot of research. I get to make it up. But because it's a series and you want continuity, I have tons of notes and notebooks so that things are accurate throughout the series. I don't want a rule of magic I make in the first book to be changed in the third. So I have tons of notes and designs and pictures, poorly illustrated pictures, because I'm not a good artist, but I have things so I know that I'm being true to the story.
That's awesome that you plotted it out and wrote it down. I did not follow those rules, so I had to keep going back and forth in the book. I did learn from book 1 to book 2 in my series that yes, you need to like keep some sort of map, because because you want to keep it all consistent. Especially, I notice eye color is something I like to talk about.
There's the nice maps.
You're an artist. Hold those back up. That is very good. You should not diminish you should see if I were to do that. It'd be very embarrassing. I had something I could have shown you, but you'd be like, wow.
With the first book, I had to rewrite scenes because I had the sun setting in the wrong direction. And I was like, oh. And I didn't originally have all the notebooks for the first book. I didn't do that either. This is when I was writing the second. I went back and I decided, okay, I organized it, characters and creatures and locations, but it would have been a lot better had I done that with the first one.
It's live and learn in writing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, all the time.
So do you consider yourself an indie artist?
Hybrid, I think, in that I have a self-published novel. It was originally traditionally published, but I think 3-4 months after it was published, they folded. So I self-published. And then I'm with Champagne Books, but they're a very small press. And so a lot of the promotion and things I have to do myself. So I would still say I was an indie author in that I have some things that I've self-published. I have some things that are being published through anthologies and independent presses. And then I have a small publisher. So I just call myself an author.
Exactly. And that's part of what I'm trying to show with Indie Insight is, even though you'll see a lot of people that are maybe more with a publisher or not, they're all basically artists, and they all have the same kind of indie spirit because you're doing a lot of it independently. Even if you have a publisher or you have a PA or you have not only just writing and creating, but then you have your editing and your self-promotion and all those fun, joyous things that come with, I want to write a book.
with the publisher I'm with, and I love them, but they are small, and they do have someone that works with publicity and things, but it's really more about she looks for opportunities and sends them to us. Like, here's a place you could promote your book, or here is a place where you might want to get a review, or here's a place where they might do an interview. And then it's really your job to seek those opportunities out.
Right. So they're kind of like almost your yellow pages. I don't know if they have that in Canada, where you can go and follow the yellow pages to find out where. Do they even have those anymore? You flip to the back, you want to look at restaurants, and then there's a list of restaurants by category.
Yeah, my students did not know what those were.
No,
I think they might.
I just dated myself many ways there. We didn't have phones always, children. We didn't always have phones.
Even with my student teachers, they're like, oh, did you have a cell phone when you were a kid? Did you use the internet for research? I'm like, well, they weren't invented yet, so no.
No, we went to this library thing, and we went
and
we went to a card catalog, and we looked at our subject, and then we had to go to find a book that had nothing to do with what we wanted. Those days, or we'd pull out our trusty encyclopedia.
Yes, I used to read the kids a short story for a mystery unit, and the character's Encyclopedia Brown, and he's smart like an encyclopedia, and I've stopped using it because they don't understand.
They're like, that is a lost art. It needs to be something like iPhone Brown or something.
Yeah,
cell phone Brown. Google it Brown. Yeah. Those days are over for us, I guess. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Just my joy of writing, and what's interesting with this is that this is my first published short story, so I'm really excited to see if people like my unique take on Goldilocks and the Three Bears, if they like my writing style. It'll be interesting to see if it matches with some of the other authors in the anthology, or if it's completely different and people like that. Some of these authors are sci-fi writers or romance novelists, or they write primarily for adults, and I come from the YA field, and so it'll be interesting to see what people react to each individual story and the anthology as a whole. So I hope that I get some audience feedback at some point. I would love to hear all the feedback, and so I can keep going with my writing and see if anyone likes the perspective that I chose.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out when I'm my TBR graveyard right now is at the point where I'm very fearful that the spirits are going to come from it and start attacking me. So, but I will one day get there, because that sounds very interesting. I love the take, where the unexpected, of what you have in mind about the sweet bear, to find out a whole different storyline. I love that. So thank you for taking the time out of your day and time away from your daughter
No
to spend some time with me.
She's at the park, so she's having fun.
Welcome. Today I have Kelsey and Barthel with me today.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me, Kelsey. Could you tell my viewers a little bit about yourself?
I'm a first-time author from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. My first book is Beyond the Code. It just got released on January 30th. I'm originally from a very small town called Hay Lakes here in Alberta. Very small population and very kind of boring. So that kind of gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time working on my creativity and working out and watching different mediums, like reading comics and watching anime, which helped me build up my imagination and brought me here to write this series.
Wonderful. So can you tell us a little bit about your series?
Beyond the Code is about this world where there is a underlining shadow system called the Order, where people with extraordinary abilities, like superpowers, are in this caste system where they work as knights for people of influential families who are their masters. And the story follows one knight. Her code name as a knight is Luna, but her real name is Aurora Fallon. And her master are trying to take down another master who is using her knights in dishonorable ways to try and overuse her powers to aggressively take more knights and build up their power in very sneaky ways. And they are trying to build a case against her for their ruling authority. But then her master gets assassinated by their enemy, Damon Lexus. And when she tries to take revenge, they order her to be hunted as a rogue knight, and she ends up teaming up with the hunter sent to kill her in order to take out the order, which they find out has become corrupt over the years. So
Wow.
yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fantasy, a little bit of
It's kind of urban fantasy.
urban fantasy, and a little
Yeah, it has fantasy elements, but it's in a modern era.
That's always nice. I know it's sometimes hard to. You got to pick what you feel comfortable with when you're.
Yeah.
Is
It's
that
right what you know?
Yeah. Do you try to base it on things around you and places you visited, or is it just all just kind of like a collective?
That's all kind of in my head to make sure that I make the rules and I'm not going off of like other places that I don't know. I created the whole world myself, which it's basically timeline-wise a lot like us, but there are some differences.
Very cool. So with your world building, are you careful to keep track and plot out, or are you more of a I'm going to sit down and write kind of
I am very much a plotter. I plot down everything before I write. That's why it took me so long to write the first book, because I basically plotted out where I wanted the whole series to go before I even started writing the first book.
That's really cool. When I wrote my first book, it was completely just write.
Yeah.
As I did it, then I realized book 2, I'm like, I had to keep referring back and forth and trying to be consistent. And then I thought, okay, you have to plot out what you're going to do here.
Yeah.
But as I plotted, I found my plots. Like, yes, it got me to here, but then all of a sudden the muses whispered something saying, no, you need to veer here. Do you find that happens, or is your plot already, the muses were already kind and brought you there?
I've had to change some things over time, like from my original ideas to especially with the help of my beta readers for the first book. They kind of pointed out some things that would be better for it. So it ended up leading the story in another direction that worked out really good in the end, because it connected one plot point in the first book to a plot point that I was going to do in the second book that I'm working on right now.
Very exciting. So is it going to be a trilogy, or is it something that may go on?
That I'm not quite sure of yet. I know exactly where it's going to go, but I have no idea how long the series is going to go. I have a number in my head of 5 books. I don't know why I have that number. I just do.
You have to go with what you want. My book series, the first book is Remember. And I had this idea in my head that I'm like, I'm going to make it so every book title begins with that first letter. So Remember, Exigency, Maisie, Envy, Meg's Winter. And then I kind of messed it up with Kanima's Destiny.
Oh.
Now renaming. No, I have to go back to my original goal. I will spell out Remember in the box set. So do you have anything kind of in mind that is kind of something that you want to achieve that might be kind of interesting to hear about? Or
for like you said, like with the with the titles, sort of started doing everyone that every title will start with Beyond. So the first one's Beyond the Code, and the second one, because it little spoiler alert, it entails them kind of going outside their order to get help from different sources. So it's called Beyond the Masquerade. Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, the word masquerade just like brings so much like possibility to mind, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Wow. So wow. I get more excited about people's books than I think they do sometimes. Oh, and I got ideas for you. So yeah, that's really cool. So I always ask authors about research because every time we write, we want to be authentic and stay true, and also not get people too mad at us if we make up something that's too close to reality and they're like, well, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've had to research that is interesting that you kind of chase down a rabbit hole? And
Well, one pinpoint that I researched was there's a lot of gun battles in my book. So as a little bit of research, I actually went to a gun range for the first time and tried it out.
wow,
Yeah.
what was that like?
It was pretty cool. I'm not that great at it. I just tried with like a normal starter gun. It was a Glock 9mm.
And
It's
you're in Canada.
Yeah.
I didn't know they allowed guns in Canada.
You have to have special permits to own guns, but you can just go to controlled gun ranges and try them out. Because you don't keep the gun. They just give you the gun. They have somebody watching you, making sure you don't do anything silly, and you just try it out.
Oh, that's cool. I think we have stuff like that. Yeah, that's really cool. Is there anything else that you've researched besides guns?
One thing I had to research was what exactly happens to your body when you get hit by lightning.
Wow.
Yeah.
I imagine that was not like a hands-on experience, like the gun.
No. I'm just like, I gotta research that. I don't know.
Yeah, so you found out some interesting things.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, this is just an interesting for me. I've had people say that lightning strikes from the ground up, and other from this like. I've heard two different versions of how lightning.
Yeah. Like from what I've researched, I'm not entirely sure how it happens. Some say from the ground up, some say from the sky down, some say from both. And there's some kind of if you look up, there's these like slow motion pictures that some people or like videos that people get with lightning strike, and sometimes you see like the 2 points connecting. It looks super cool.
Lightning is amazing to watch, but you probably shouldn't dabble.
Yeah.
Just thinking. I haven't researched it, so I don't know for sure, but
yeah. A little bit dangerous to work with.
yeah, there's certain things you don't do. You don't stick with ports and lights. Don't run outside with a while it's lightning.
What's it gonna do?
I don't know. I didn't hear anything about Benjamin Franklin. That's really cool. So you are an indie author, and this is your first book. So have you been introduced to the indie world?
In parts. I've met up with some, like, I have networked with some people in the community of Inkshares, which is the website I published my book through. It's basically a combination between crowdfunding and traditional publishing, where you do run a campaign, and if you get so many pre-orders, then they publish your book.
Wow. That's probably stressful and exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it was pretty, like, it was very fast-paced, the campaign, and then afterwards, I felt a little unprepared because I'm like, "Oh god, that actually worked. What am I gonna do?"
You're like, "What?"
Oh, man. Actually, I have to make a book now.
What do you mean I gotta write a book? It was an idea. I know. I do that all the time. I sign up for things. I'm like, why did I say yes to that?
Yeah. You're like, right.
Well,
but I'm very I'm connected with that community, and then I'm starting to get a little bit more connected with the indie authors through Mickey and other mediums.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, now you are part of the GoIndieNow family. And
Yay.
once we invite you in, unfortunately, we don't let you go. So, just kidding. But no, I was going to ask you what you love about being an indie author.
I just love it's kind of there's like not really that kind of disconnect that I think some of like the big time authors might have, but like you really get like down with the people and find out what exactly they think, and you can like reach out to people and get people's opinions of stuff while you're working on it, and you'll be able to find like people who want to help you by beta reading and stuff like that. It's very supportive community.
Wonderful. I'm glad you've had that experience. I've not had too many people complain about it. Every once in a while you hear, but I think for the most part, authors as a community are pretty cool people to be around.
Yeah, they know the struggle.
They're like, I know the failure. Well,
Yeah.
when you write a book, you're like, and I don't know if you've experienced this, you finished your book, you're like, oh my God, I finished it. And then you start editing it, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't finish it.
Yeah, you're just like, there's still so much work to do.
What? No, what do you mean it's not done? I said it was done a month ago, and then what do you mean it's on page 50?
Yeah, you're just like, that's only the beginning.
So, is that something you experienced as you're writing, or was it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The editing process was just like I finished the book and then I had to change so many things and found out I was really like way worse at grammar than I already thought I was.
You're like, wow, I really.
Like, oh God, why don't I know how to use this?
You're like, why did they even give me the computer today?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked back at and then your sentence like that was so brilliant when you read it back later, like a day later, you're like, what are you even trying to say?
Yeah, I've done that because I've written a lot of because my writing process goes in instead of just like chapters, it goes in story arcs, and that's how I kind of plan out my books. Like they're kind of and like shows and anime have really influenced me. So each story arc is kind of like an episode or a group of episodes where like they have an adventure, but it's all connected by the overall arcing story. So I had some story arcs that I planned ahead like way long time ago for my second book, and I'm just reading through the notes that I wrote by hand, and I'm like, what was I trying to do here? I'm like, I can't use any of this.
It was brilliant a year ago.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
you really just sense the like how you grow as a writer when you read your old stuff. You're just like, wow, you, even though it was like only like this many years ago, you feel like you're reading something that you wrote as a kid.
Right. And I mean, it's exciting when you go back and you're like, wow, that's good. Who wrote that? And you're like, me.
Yeah, that's always fun.
That's the great part. But then when you're like, who wrote that?
Yeah. Don't talk about those parts.
But as an indie author, we do have the option to go back and revamp our stories.
Exactly.
Well, I think all authors have that option.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've made it into a movie and then.
Yeah, then you're like, oh, it's stuck now.
Maybe you don't care by then, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever like imagine characters that would play your be the actors in your story in your
I have imagined some of them. Like not any real like names, but there's a couple where I still like see them like pictures of them and I'm like, that guy looks almost just like my character.
Like, why did they steal my face?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's hard to always like pinpoint the exact author or the exact actor, but sometimes like Judi Dench is my all-time. I just adore her. So I wrote the story. The grandmother is a mesh of my grandmother and Judi Dench. So I'm very like Judi Dench has to play my character. Like she has to play. I've actually, I'm gonna, make it happen one day. I'm sure I'll be right over. But, yeah. So I know it's hard to find the other characters in your mind. It has been a complete delight in learning more about you and going beyond Kelsey. So I hope that we can do this again. And
totally.
When book 2 comes out, I'm sure you're going to come back and have some more information for us about book 3 through 5.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Hi, I'm PT Macias.
PT, why do you write paranormal stories?
And why do I love paranormal? Because there's a huge range of characteristics, of powers. My God, the sky's the limit what you can imagine and create when you write paranormal compared to contemporary.
Thank you, PT. I hope everyone will check out your links.